Opposite Gloves here, and this is another video in the how to make your first song in FL Studios 12. And today we're just going to real quick cover the channel rack and the basic ideas behind it. Basically the most important things you really need to know, or things that I found if you don't know about can really screw you up. So just starting across, this is our channel rack. This guy right here, and you have a whole bunch of channels. And as we talked about in the previous video 2, these channels could be automation clips, they can be samples or audio clips, and they can be synthesizers. Now, how does this work? Well, you have all these, so each channel has a little, it's given a channel line right here. And going across, you have this mute button, which just silences or allows your channel to be heard. So you can mute multiple things and hear what's going on. You have a panning. So right now, the sound will only come out the left. And now it'll only come out the right. And you can see it's reflected right here in our panning right here. And we have our channel volume, which is also reflected. Just changes how loud it is. So not that loud, much louder. This will also change the velocity range. So if you can max out at volume here and you're hitting a key on your keyboard or whatever, or you're changing velocity, how hard the note should be, it can only max out right here. It can't get any louder. It also should be noted that these controls are separate from the mixer track it's being sent to. So this one right here represents what mixer track it's going to. So right now we have it set to 1. And so as you can see, we have our own pan control and volume control here. And these are separate. These are generally used for mixing, which we'll talk about later. But just so you know, it's being sent to 1. If it's not on a thing, then it's going to the master, just the master. But right now it's going to 1. And so it's important to know where it's going to the mixer, because this is where you're going to be adding effects and other various things. Okay, so moving across here, we have our actual channel. And when you click on it, you get this. You get a whole bunch of general settings. And I'm going to just let you tweak with these. This would be like a more in-depth video. But again, you have these volume controls right here that basically turn the volume down in one direction or the other, which is really nice for changing samples. And you have this green, another important thing. When something's indented, that means you have that selected for your MIDI controller, as you can see. And as we talked about, you can enable or disable that up here. And what does this green box have to do? Well, it can mean a number of things, but we're going to talk about this concept of folders before we continue moving on. So right now we have this little folder icon up here, and this can really screw you up if you don't know about it. So if you have some sounds loaded up, but then all of a sudden for whatever reason you get changed to another folder, you just lost all your other channels. Well, what just happened? Well, it just generated a folder called audio clips, because we just moved an audio clip into our large sequencer here. And that gave us this folder. And to change it back, we can go to unsorted. And there's all our unsorted. They've not been put in a folder. How do you add a folder? Well, you can just click one, and you can click add filter group, or you could delete the group. So you could delete unsorted. And deleting the group, so you click OK. It does not get rid of the channels. It simply puts them into all. And you cannot delete the all folder. You can select channels. So you can click Alt-Shift. And you can create a filter group. And we could call this unsorted. My bad. So in order to add channels to our group unsorted, so we have unsorted here. This could be kind of a mess, but just so you know, now you know these folder things, these things will get sent. Automation clips will have their own unsorted. All will display everything regardless. But let's say we want to add these guys to our unsorted group. What you have to do is you have to hold down Control Shift and select, and you'll see they're selected by this green thing, and select these channels, and then you have to hit Alt G. And it will say filter group name. And so now we just type in our name, unsorted, and boom. Now they're been, as you can see, our one audio clip disappeared. Now they're in the group unsorted. And there's our audio, and there's our all. Now you can also right click, and you could rename this group to drums, because these are our drums, and boom, now your drums are here. So if you ever want to just mess with those drum channels, that's where they are. This is just an important concept for knowing your way around. All right, now we're going to cover these steps right here. So the steps work, it's pretty simple. You have these steps and you just simply click over and it'll activate more steps as you need them, an entire measure. We already covered this in the previous video, so I'm not going to cover how this is the beat and things. But if you do know music theory, this is where your beats are. So this is a 4/4 measure, and these extra 3 would be your subdivisions, which would be 16th notes. If you don't know music theory, I have a tutorial series on that. It's already up. And as we go along here and we put in things, you can change how the steps are interpreted. So if we play it right now, it'll just be straight 16th notes. And you can do that by hitting your space bar to trigger play. And you have to make sure your pattern play is on. And so as long as our pattern plays on up here, you can hear it. Let's fill it just completely up. And you can hear us being straight. But if we turn our swing on a little, you see it starts to take effect. And if it's all the way on, it completely messes with our pattern. It should be noted that swing only affects the step when you're putting them in the steps. These are called your steps. Only then. You can also play what's being heard in your pattern by simply pushing play on the channel rack, and you will hear what's there. It'll automatically switch to pattern mode for you. You could switch between this view and MIDI view by simply clicking this here step button. So now our step button's off and you can see the piano roll, and you can click on it to get to the piano roll and add your notes. That's one way of getting to the piano roll, or you can simply do that. And so that's what these buttons up here do, and that's what the folders do. Now we're going to talk about adding plugins so that you can begin to create your song. And now that we know how to move folders around, now there's 2 ways to do this from the step sequence here, and those are the ones we're going to cover. So you have this down arrow, and you have all these options, and you have add one. So you can add a channel here, a plugin. And so make sure you select a synthesizer. Some of these things are MIDI controllers, which are another topic. But let's say, okay, we're going and you want to add a harmor, and bang, and it shows up right here. You'll notice that it's not assigned to a master channel. It's assigned to the master. It's not assigned to its own mixer track. To fix this, you can change that here, or you can change it here on it. This will pop up. It's called the wrapper. So any plugin you open will have this top menu with all these additional options right here, which are a topic for plugins. And you can fix this by simply hitting Control L, and boom, it puts it in the channel for you. And it names it and everything, colors it and everything. It's great. It's whoop-de-doodle. But if you want to name it something different and color it something different, you need to do that and then assign it. Otherwise, your change will not be reflected here. So just a quick note. So you've loaded up your sound and you've assigned it to a track, or maybe you want it going out the master. But note, if you change it now, that does not, number 5 harmor is still there, even though this is no longer being routed there. So this could get confusing if you don't stay on top of things. But I happen to know harmor's really loud, so I'm going to turn the volume down a lot. And I have it selected and it's going right here. Let's add it to a group just so that we can have it be its own thing. So first we'll go add filter group, synth, and then we'll go to our all and click Alt G while we have it selected and add it to synth. And now it's in synth, and we can put our synthesizers here. And in the future, you could just add things straight to here. So you can say, oh, I want to add another synthesizer. We'll add another harmor. And now, boom, it's right there. And you're good to go. And it also is reflected in your all, but it's not in your other groups. So you can stay very organized like this. This is a feature, honestly, I generally just don't use. I go through and I just slap everything everywhere, and because I'm working on the project, I just know where stuff is. But if you're going to give this project to someone else, it could be important. So anyways, that's how you add additional channels and plugins here. We'll talk about plugins later. You can also scroll through your piano roll here, and you'll notice that as we add notes, it adds a whole new measure for us to use. Another useful feature. You can also add plugins using this here plus button, and boom, you have your whole list and you can add more stuff. This is third-party stuff. We'll talk about putting that in later if you do have third-party stuff. And so let's talk about the piano roll real quick. So with synthesizers, you're adding notes. You want to add, synthesis. So in order to do that, you can right click, go to piano roll, and it will pop open. And now you can add notes. And you see it automatically switches to MIDI view. An alternative to getting to this menu is just turn steps off and click here, and boom, you will see our MIDI views opened up. If you turn steps back on, it stays in MIDI view. So that's a nice feature. So now you can add your notes and things, and you see they get reflected up here. And you could scroll through. If they start going off screen, you could just scroll through on your step sequencer. However, the scroll bar will appear when you need it. However, you're going to want to edit notes in the piano roll, so you'll just stay in the piano roll. And we'll talk about the piano roll in another video. And that is basically the step sequencer, the most important features. Oh, there is one more I almost overlooked, like one of the most important things. This thing creates your patterns, right? So you could have something going in one group, like you could have a C, and then you could go to another group, drums, and add something. And now you also could see how long your pattern is here. And now it'll play both those things at the same time, even though they're in separate groups. As you see, they're being played at the same time. And so it's important to keep track of that. If you want to see everything at once, you go to all, and you can see how it's all being related to each other. So that is important to know. So you've created a pattern when you do something like this. And so this is now a pattern. You push play, it'll all play at the same time. And to change your patterns, you actually have to come up here to your pattern option. And you could click add a new pattern, and it'll do that. You can name it and things. You can right click the pattern to see all your various patterns you have available. So if we added another pattern and then another pattern and put something there, it won't save patterns that you haven't put anything in. So we have pattern 1, and we could go to pattern 2 or pattern 3 right from here. You can also alternatively just scroll up and down, and you see it'll take us like way past any pattern we've actually created. All right, and you'll also see here that we have find first empty. That will add the next new pattern for you. Find first empty will always find the next. So if you rename pattern 2 something, so we right click pattern 2 and go to rename, which is right here, rename in color, we name it yes. Find next empty will go to pattern 4 still. So it will not go back to pattern 2. I always use just find first empty, and I name stuff as I go. And then this next one, find next empty, no naming, does not give you the option to name. It just adds a new one, and you get that by holding down Control plus F4. So Control F4, and then it will automatically just add a new pattern. You don't need to worry about naming it. And so coming down here, we have rename, color. The other important ones are delete, if you want to delete your pattern, and the clone, if you wish to make an exact replica. Maybe you've made some complicated rhythm and you want to clone it so you can make a new, you can variate that rhythm without having to recreate the whole thing because it's really complicated. You just right click, go clone, and now it'll clone it. So if we go to our yes pattern and go clone, we now see we have yes number 2, and we can clone it. The same goes for right clicking on channels. You right click, you have a lot of the same menus. You can go to change color, change icon, so you can give icons to your stuff. Maybe you have like a guitar on this one. So now you have your guitar. And so you have icon. Load sample. We'll talk about that in just a sec. You have insert, so you can insert additional things. You could change what's there. So we just inserted, so we didn't get rid of the hat. We inserted something in between the hat and the clap, and that is our oscillator right here. So that's what insert does. Another way to add things, if for whatever reason, you can change where your things are in this menu by holding down shift and dragging up and down, or scrolling with your mouse wheel up and down, and that would change where it lies. So that could be very nice. Super nice thing to know about. So we have a note here and we want it gone. Well, you can go, not cut itself. You can go to cut and it's gone. Or you can go to paste and it's back. And if you have a note right here, you can go to cut, but cut also is essentially a type of copy, but it gets rid of whatever was here, and you go to paste and it shows up. So you don't need to worry about that. You could also alternatively, if you don't want to get rid of it, but you still want to copy it, you can hit copy and then paste, and it's pretty simple. And it will put the exact same note. So if you have a crazy piano roll sequence going on like this, and you say, oh man, I want that on another synth, you can go copy and you can go paste. Let's say also you have a synthesizer, you've made a patch in this horrifyingly looking complicated thing, and you want to clone it and make a few adjustments so you can have another layer. Well, you can go right click, clone, and bang. Now you can start layering things and you can make adjustments on this one and it will be separate from this one. So you can clone things just like you can clone patterns. Now this fill every 2, fill every 4, this refers to the steps. So every 4 steps would be every beat, as you can see, every 8 steps, every other beat, and then every 2 steps is basically 8th notes, subdividing the beat. And those are the ones that are most often touched. Now, if you put down a channel, you could delete it, but this will delete it completely, like off of every menu you have. So be careful. And you also have replace. If you accidentally put down one channel and you're like, oh, I didn't want that, you go here, replace, and you can select what you want to replace it with, as you can see. And that's pretty much that. That's what this does. Now to add sounds, you can just simply go to your file browser if you have sounds you want. So let's go to our packs, because they just added this in FL 12.2, I believe. And you can go to kicks and preview your kicks and say, oh, I like this kick. Drag it in and boom, it's added. You can also drag it and place it between 2 things. Be careful. And you can also drag it and replace something. But if you replace it, replace something. There you go. Some things I don't understand completely, but sometimes it won't let you replace it. Like see, it will not replace that. But it will replace other things, and you cannot hit Control Z to undo it. Control Z only works for MIDI. It doesn't work for everything, okay? I'm not going to make definitive statements about that. I'm not 100% sure. But I know Control Z does not undo if you accidentally replace something. Now you're done. You can't get that sound back unless you go hunt for that sound again and put it back. So be very careful when you're adding sounds. Maybe add them at the bottom and put them up, or you could just drag them, put them in between. Just make sure you haven't selected anything. And so that's how you add sounds. You could alternatively load sounds, or you could go on your desktop, find a sound, grab it, and drag it back onto your thing and add it here. And the same goes for synthesizers. Well, synthesizers you pretty much have to add through here or here. And you could also add it through this thing, as I talked about in the last video. You could select your plugin, like here's Harmer. You could drag it and add it through the plugin picker up here. And if you accidentally open this menu, you can just right click to exit it. And as far as automation clips are concerned, we'll talk about that later as you get more into it. But if you want to like turn a knob on or off, you can right click almost any knob and native to FL. It's different for third party stuff. And you can go to create automation clip and boom, you now have an automation clip and you could turn it on slowly. So this is off, this is on, and you hit play, you'll notice that our kick is all the way off now. But as we move across, you can see it's switching to turn on. So this would turn our volume, our knob on. That's what automation clips do. When you right click, you click create automation clip. You can see in all, we have our automation clip here, and it has its own channel. But you can go to automation clips as well. In here, automation, which is automatically created, and boom, there's our automation clip. So I usually mess around in the unsorted file, and you don't have the automation clips everywhere, because sometimes you end up having a lot of those guys and it can be confusing. So using the folder system is very helpful. So this is actually a lot more information than I thought. Kind of went a bit longer, but I didn't want to leave out anything. I feel like understanding this is super mega important to creating your song and just ease of workflow. And as you can see, all these things have first of all, you can't add a channel for automation clips, but you can add channels for all these other plugins and things. So if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. That's the basics of this. Astoundingly, there's more we could still go into, but this is like the stuff that is like necessary or stuff that could definitely hold you up. If you have any questions, let me know. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoy these videos or find them useful, and have a blessed day.